So 2 years ago on this channel, I reviewed my very first Zulisy optic. And that was this red dot right here, the Zulisy Oak Plus. Well, now Zulisy has decided to make the Oak Plus even better. And now we have the Oak Plus Pro. And if you are a big fan of green dots, well, they've got you covered there too, because now they have the Oak Plus Pro G. So what's the difference between the Oak Plus and the Oak Plus Pro? Well, they changed the dot size from 3.5 MOA to 2 MOA, but now you have a multi-reticle system. Alright, we're over on the other bench, and before we dive into all the specs, I am going to bring a picture up on the screen and show you everything that comes in the box. Now, we already talked about how the Oak Plus had a 3.5 MOA red dot or green dot, depending on what version you went with. Well, the Oak Plus Pro has a 2 MOA red dot or green dot with a 28 MOA circle. And I'm going to bring a picture of that up on the screen as well so you can see what that reticle looks like. Now you have the option on this optic to run it with just the dot, with just the circle, or the circle and the dot together. Now when you first turn it on, it's going to be on the dot. You're going to hold your plus button down for 3 seconds. It will change to just the circle. You'll hold it again for 3 seconds and it will switch to the dot and circle together. Now, if we look here at the top, you can see that this has the RMR footprint. And it also has a backup iron sight on the back of the optic. I always like to see this, because if your dot goes down, well, you can use this backup iron sight with the front sight on your pistol. And the window size stays the same on this one, just like all the others. And this has a massive 26mm lens. And there's a good look at the bottom, and as you can see, they've done away with that bottom load battery, and now you have a side load battery. And this runs on a CR1632 battery. It does have a 50,000 hour battery life. Obviously, that's going to be on the lowest setting, and what helps out with that long battery life, this does have shake awake, and we will be testing that out later on in the video. Now the camera's going to have a hard time picking up the multi-reticle system, and right now I have it turned all the way up on just the 2 MOA dot, and it is super bright. All the Zulisy optics are very bright. The greens tend to be a little brighter than the red. I am getting some starbursting, but that has nothing to do with the optic. That is due to my astigmatism. Now this does have 10 brightness settings. It has 8 daytime settings and 2 NV. And I know the camera's going to have a hard time picking that up, but now I am running the 2 MOA dot with the 28 MOA circle. Now the Oak Plus Pro does have an aluminum body, and it does have an IPX7 waterproof rating. Alright, one thing that I like to do in every one of these optic review videos is check the clicks on our windage and elevation. I like to see if they are tactile and audible. One thing that I already like, I can see the up very easy on the elevation with the arrow pointing that direction. And on the windage, it's very easy to see the R with the arrow pointing down. Now these are 1 MOA per click. You have 45 MOA of total travel on the windage and on the elevation. So let's check our windage first. Oh, that's nice. That's a bit of an improvement over the last one. Very tactile clicks. They are audible. Let's check our elevation. Same thing. Very tactile, somewhat audible. The windage on this is a little bit more audible and tactile, but the elevation is not bad at all. All right, I'm going to go get this mounted up on the test gun, and I will see you out at the range. So let's dive a little bit into the history of the Zulisy Oak Plus, because basically this is the 3rd gen version of this optic. Now the original Oak Plus was the very first red dot from Zulisy that I tested on this channel. And the main reason I got it was because of the massive window on it and the price. Because back when I got that first optic, I used a discount code and I actually got it for under 100 beans. Now the biggest downfall to the Gen 1 of that optic was that it was a bottom load battery. And everybody loved the optic, but they hated the fact that it was a bottom load battery. So a little over a year later, they came out with another version of the Oak Plus, and it was still called the Oak Plus. But this time, they had a red dot version and a green dot version, and it had the side load battery, which is what everybody wanted with the first one. So now basically what we have here is a 3rd generation of this optic, and they've pretty much perfected it at this point. Now not only do you have the side load battery, you also have the red or green dot option available, and now we have the multi-reticle system. All right, we didn't start off too hot over here. I did have one miss on this piece of steel, but things started to get better here. We've got a nice cluster of alphas, but I do have one Charlie. And our next target, we've got all alphas. And we've got all our hits on the last piece of steel. Now the best part about this optic obviously is the massive 1x26mm window in this. And that is why this has become such a popular optic. And just like all the other versions of the Zulisy Oak Plus, the glass on this is nice and clear, and the multi-reticle system in this is super bright. And it doesn't matter whether you're using the 2 MOA dot, the 28 MOA circle, or you're using the dot and circle together. It's definitely plenty bright. All right, here we go. I am struggling with this piece of steel over here on the left. We did have one miss. Now I'm really liking this. We've got all alphas. And our next target, we've got all alphas, but we do have one Charlie. But we did have all our hits on this piece of steel. Now what I did when I got to the range was I turned the dot all the way up, and then I turned it down 2 clicks, and that was perfect for my shooting conditions all day at the range. And even though we're not testing the red dot version in this video, I did bring the optic to the range, and I was getting just a little bit of starbursting with the red dot and just the tiniest amount of starbursting with the green dot. And I've said this time and time again on the channel when I'm doing reviews on these optics that I definitely prefer green over red with my astigmatism. Now after I got about 100 rounds racked up on the optic, I wanted to shoot some 10-shot groups. Now I didn't want to go overboard with any kind of torture testing in this video because honestly, I would not use this dot for carry. And I've said this time and time again in the review videos that I did on the 1st gen Oak Plus and the 2nd gen. This is basically a competition style red or green dot. In fact, that's why the Gen 1 is still on my Canik TP9 SFX, is because that is one of the pistols I used to shoot in USPSA. But with that being said, I still wanted to get a little bit of abuse on this optic by racking it off the tailgate on the truck. So after I shot the first 2 10-shot groups, I went back to the truck, put the tailgate down, and started racking the slide multiple times with the optic on the tailgate. And I'm happy to report that the optic held up just fine. I did not lose 0, and I really didn't even get any scratches on the housing in front of the glass. So it held up to the tailgate exactly as I was hoping it would. So now let's talk about what it's like using the multi-reticle system on this. Now, throughout the day, I did use the dot, I did use the circle, and I used the dot and circle together. Now, if you've watched my optic reviews in the past, you know that I really don't care about multi-reticle systems, especially on handguns. I just prefer using a dot. I don't care if it's a red dot or a green dot or a blue dot or any other dot color. I would rather just use the dot than use a dot and a circle. But I will say this about the Oak Plus Pro G. It's got a very nice crisp dot. Like I said, I got very little starbursting off of it. But one thing I noticed, when you turn on the dot and the circle, it's super crisp. And just using the circle is nice and crisp. And we already talked about how it's plenty bright. So if you like that multi-reticle system, I think you're going to really like this optic, and this is going to be your best option out of the second gen and this one. Now, at the beginning of the video, when we were doing the unboxing, I told you that I was going to test the Shake Awake on this Oak Plus Pro G. And I've been doing something differently this year on the channel with these optics. I used to test the Shake Awake while I was doing the unboxing video. But I decided that it would be better to do the test after we get a few hundred rounds on the optic and we've racked it off the tailgate of the truck. And sometimes we do water tests on these optics, especially if we're going to be using them for carry. And after we do all that, I think that is the best time to test the Shake Awake. And as you can see, the Shake Awake worked just fine. So far, this dot is doing exactly everything that it should. Alright, so let's dive into the pros and cons with this Zulisy Oak Plus Pro G. And we're going to start with the cons first. And honestly, I didn't have any cons until I got here in the studio and I noticed that my screw is missing out of my battery tray. That is a first with a Zulisy optic. It's not the first time I've had this happen, but it is the first time with a Zulisy that I've lost a screw. Now, I did open up the battery door. I wanted to see how it was sealed up and all that, and this is kind of coming back on me. I know better. I should have put a little dab of blue Loctite on that screw and put it back in. So, not going to blame Zulisy. I should have put blue Loctite on it, but sometimes these optics will come with the battery already installed and people are going to mount them right on their gun and go to the range. So if you're watching this review and you're thinking about buying this optic, you might want to check that battery door screw. Now I think we can get into all the pros with this optic. One thing that we really haven't mentioned yet, but this optic does have a backup iron sight built into the optic. I always like seeing that. I think they should put these on every optic. And the reason that's kind of a big deal is if the optic were to fail, at least you've got a backup rear iron sight that you can use with the front sight on your gun. Another big plus for me with this gun and this setup, especially having this ported barrel, was throughout the day this optic got pretty dirty. Obviously it's not the optic's fault, it's just the fact that I'm running a ported barrel with a cutout in the slide, and I was getting quite a bit of carbon and stuff built up on the glass, and I wiped it off a couple times throughout the review, and the glass looks great. There's no scratches. It held up just fine. So I'm real happy with the glass quality in this. We already talked about how bright the dot is. It was plenty bright enough for me at the range for the review. Like I said, I did turn it down a couple clicks after I turned it all the way up. The multi-reticle system works great if you're into that sort of thing. It's not for me, but it's for a lot of other people. We already talked about how massive the window is on this, and that's why I've said time and time again, when it comes to the Oak Plus, if you're a new shooter that's thinking about getting into competition shooting and you're on a budget, this is a great dot to use for that. I'll go back to the original Oak Plus. I've got a couple thousand, maybe more rounds on the original one, and it's still working great. I showed you at the very beginning of the video, it's still on my Canon TP9 SFX. The shake awake works great. We did not lose zero on this optic. The windage and elevation are tactile and audible enough. Are they the best we've tested on the channel? No, but they work just fine. And all in all, it's just a great optic for the money. So who do I think this dot's for? Well, we already said that this would be a great entry dot for somebody that's thinking about shooting USPSA, Steel Challenge, or any other type of competition. I already said I don't think it's the best carry option because, well, it's a pretty massive optic. But a second thing that I think this optic is great for is somebody that has a lot of guns, that can't afford to put big competition style dots on everything, like the Trijicon SRO, whatever Holosun's calling their big dot now. These are great dots, especially if it's just guns that you take to the range and plink with. The big window on the Oak Plus is pretty awesome for that as well. So all in all, I recommend this Oak Plus Pro G if you're looking for a multi-reticle dot. If you're like me and you don't care about a multi-reticle, well, you can save yourself just a little bit of money and just buy the Oak Plus. You're still going to get that side load battery. You're going to get that nice bright dot, and you've got all the features that this has minus the multi-reticle, but that's a choice you've got to make. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.